Good morning and welcome. My name is Rachel Beatty. I'm the Director of Productive Persistence and the Student Agency Improvement Community at the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. Thank you so much for having me. I wish I could be there in person this morning, but I'm a little sick and I didn't want to infect all of you. Today we get to talk about my favorite thing, that's productive persistence, as well as our work on the Starting Strong and Staying Strong packages, which are co-developed with faculty and embedded in StatWay and QuantWay. Before we get into the details of our activities and routines, I want to first talk about what we mean by productive persistence. Well, we first developed this term to combat stereotypes that many people have around community college students, namely that they don't try, that they're not gritty, and they just really don't persist. However, what we saw in our data of 1,000 students is that 50% started college over 3 years ago, 20% started college over 5 years ago, 8% started college over 10 years ago, and 2.5% started college over 20 years ago or more. So it's not that they're not persistent, they're just unproductively persistent. Many of these students come back to our classrooms year after year. And what we really want them to do is not only work hard, but work smart and be productively persistent. Now, we saw these results across many colleges, many different types of curriculum, many different types of pedagogy. So when we were starting to look for how we could address students' productive persistence, we knew it wasn't tackling, say, trying a new curriculum or a new way of teaching. What the research told us is that maybe we should focus in on students' beliefs and attitudes about themselves, their learning strategies, a space called non-cognitives. But it's dangerous to give this space a name, because as soon as you tell somebody you're working on it, they might come to you with a bunch of suggestions. And what we call this inclination, this natural reaction to an urgent problem, we call it solutionitis, or the search for the perfect widget. Basically, just trying to do anything to help these students. So if you say you're working on productive persistence, your colleague might say, well, you should try peer tutors to promote a sense of belonging and study skills, but they should also have study skills in the classroom to help them learn how to study for the exams. And maybe we need intrusive advising to make sure they're on the right course, but don't forget metacognitive monitoring of progress towards goals, because they need to know what they know and they don't know. But maybe we should help them navigate the college campus so they can locate the resources. Maybe that's through a mandatory orientation that everyone must experience, but proper placement is essential. We need to make sure students are in the right classes, but when they're there, we should give them wraparound supports and potentially supplemental instruction. And student cohorts are really great at promoting belonging, so we should enact those in many courses as we can, and we should always invest in faculty development. But don't forget academic counseling, because we need to make sure they're headed on the right path, but they should be self-regulated learners and understand why they're studying, what they're studying. But career planning is important, because we shouldn't lose sight of the future. And maybe we'll just make it all really fast, and so they can get to their goals faster. And don't forget a sense of self-efficacy. So we'll just do all of that. No problem, right? Well, it's not that these are bad ideas. Actually, many of these are really promising. However, they're coming from the wrong perspective. They're from an outsider's perspective, and they're just layering on top of a broken system rather than trying to be embedded within it. And that's not the approach that we took when we developed productive persistence. We interviewed faculty and students, and we tried to get the best sense that we could of what the lived experience is like, what these students are actually experiencing, what the faculty are experiencing, what do we need to work on. And through these interviews, we were able to really understand our students' thoughts about themselves as mathematics learners. Here's one student after completing the diagnostic assessment in a developmental mathematics course. I'm embarrassed by how stupid I am and suddenly feeling very discouraged. I can't even tell which fraction is bigger than another or where they should fall on the number line. I feel like crying. And many students said this, that there's no way they can learn math. They just don't see how they can do it, that they don't belong here, they don't find it valuable, that there's this race of math people and they're not one of them and they never will be. It was a sense of despair that they could not change it. And we started looking in the literature and started talking with our faculty to get a sense of what could we do to help these students. And so we combined 4 sources of expertise to develop our productive persistence framework and the activities and routines. And the first, as I mentioned, is from research, and specifically the psychology of learning. We are seeing so many promising results from brief and inexpensive studies done in K through 12 and 4-year colleges. For example, Carol Dweck has done this 8-week workshop that improved middle schoolers' GPAs for the entire year. And Jeremy Jameson worked with Harvard students to reduce their stress, and that had payoffs and benefits on exam performance, again, throughout an entire year, but only took 30 minutes. However, you might have already picked up on this, that many, if not most of these psychological studies were done with K through 12 and Ivy League 4-year institutions, but nobody was studying community college students. And so that's where our other source of expertise comes from. That's from you, from our faculty. What are effective classroom interventions that people are already doing? And we learned that many people were trying effective things in their classroom. However, they were siloed. They were unable to share between classrooms, let alone between institutions. And so what we wanted to do is connect these researchers to faculty to develop new routines. And in order to develop these new routines and test them out, we used improvement science methods. Now, these improvement science methods allow us to make predictions, test them in class, study them, and adapt them and refine them until we can implement them reliably and at scale. And in order to do that reliably and at scale and learn from diverse contexts, we use what we know about creating networks, creating networked improvement communities to bring this community together to use improvement methods and learn how to help our students develop productive persistence. So using our 4 areas of expertise and all our wonderful people in our network, we are able to develop the productive persistence framework, which the aim is that students continue to put forth effort during challenges, and when they do so, they're using effective strategies. Now, when we originally came up with this framework, we had around 100 different drivers that could have populated this. However, we thought, 1, that's way too many for a slide, but also not all of those are high leverage. And we narrowed it down to a list of 5 very high leverage drivers that we believe if you make progress on these, that more of your students will be productively persistent. And they are as follows. First, that students believe that they're capable of learning, that it's even possible for them to succeed in this setting. The second is that students feel socially tied to peers, faculty, and the course, that they develop a sense of belonging and a sense of identity as a mathematics learner. We also want students to believe that the course has value. And when we talk about value, we mean both short-term, is it related to their current interests or current job, but also long-term, is it related to their sense of purpose, where they want to go with their career and what they want to do with their life. We also want students to have skills, habits, and know how to succeed in a college setting. There are many different things skills that aren't traditional study skills. We include emotional regulation, so we teach students about stress reappraisal, but we also help students navigate a syllabus and navigate the environment. And last but not least, we want faculty and colleges to support student skills and mindsets. And this is really important to create that learning environment in which it's okay and actually promotes the development of these thoughts about themselves and the development and application of these skills. So this is our productive persistence framework, and we are all really excited that we agreed on these 5 primary drivers. However, that's not enough for us at the foundation, for we have a model that you cannot improve what you cannot measure. So we went out and we measured it to see if these drivers actually mattered for college students. And so we surveyed our students on week 1, and in our data set we categorized them as at risk or not at risk. So high risk would be somebody who didn't think they could succeed, felt like they didn't belong, had high levels of anxiety, felt like they were targeted by a stereotype threat. Versus low risk would be somebody who felt like they could learn, felt like they belong, and had low anxiety and did not feel stigmatized or stereotyped in that setting. And what we see when students enter is that 61% of the high-risk students enter with below median baseline math knowledge skills. And that's not really surprising if you think about it, that our previous experiences in this area shape what we think we can do in the future, shape our expectancies for ourselves. What is interesting, though, is that 4 months later at that mid-course assessment, that gap between the high-risk and the low-risk students is still there, with 55% of the high-risk students failing the mid-course assessment versus only 28% failing of the low-risk students. What's even more interesting, again, measured at week 1, these survey results show differences at the end of course assessment, which is 10 months later. So 63% of the high-risk students fail the end of course assessment versus only 13% of the low-risk students. And so you might have noticed that that gap is not only there, but it has widened. And what we think, and our faculty that we spoke with when we were developing this framework think, is that if students feel like they can't learn, that they don't belong, this isn't much value for them, and they have really high anxiety, they might stop investing effort in your class. They're going to pull away, stop coming to this class, stop trying the problems, and ultimately fade out of your class, withdraw, or fail the course. And so this is a cycle of disengagement that starts really early in the course. It's something that we felt like we should act on right away. And so that was why we wanted to develop the Starting Strong package. And we really wanted to understand what practices could we use in Statway and Quantway classrooms to prevent this cycle of disinvestment. And so before I get into the Starting Strong package, I do want to go a little bit over where research-based practices come from, and it's not from the stork. It starts often with a hunch. And in this case, hunch was quite data informed. It was informed through student interviews and faculty interviews. And we acted on that hunch to develop a set of change ideas, a set of routines and activities that we thought might be helpful, such as a growth mindset writing activity, getting to know you, a productive struggle introduction, etc., as you will see in the Starting Strong package. But we developed this change, and we started with small testing just to see that it could work. And when we got evidence that it could work, we wanted to see how it could work. So we started testing under multiple conditions in different classrooms with different teachers. How does this work when different teachers are trying the same activity? And once we started to learn more about that, we actually tested under increasingly varied conditions. How does this work across a whole network, a very diverse network, with small classrooms, big classrooms, Statway and Quantway, online courses, accelerated courses? We're actually still learning about how this works under increasingly varied conditions. And we take that learning and we bring it back to help people make system-wide changes. How do we implement this change? What's the best of our knowledge? And that goes back into the Starting Strong package, which we update every year. And so that's where our research-based practices come from. And through that process, we developed the Starting Strong package, which is used in the first 3 to 4 weeks of the pathways to help proactively promote these mindsets and learning strategies. And there's 3 big goals of that Starting Strong package. The first is establish classroom norms and expectations that promote productive persistence and productive struggle. Second, we focus explicitly on shifting students' beliefs about themselves as mathematics learners and doers. And we also focus shifting our own beliefs about what students are able to do in our math classes, and how we're able to shift students' beliefs about themselves and our beliefs about ourselves as instructors. And through this Starting Strong package, implemented across all of the pathways, we have seen great impact in just the first month of the course. So again, in just the first month of the course, we see that students are more interested in math, they're more confident about their ability to succeed, they think math is more relevant to them, their belief that their intelligence is fixed drops dramatically, as well as their math anxiety and their stereotype threat. And so for the rest of this presentation, what I'm going to do is start digging into each one of our drivers and talk a little bit about the research behind it and the different activities and routines that we've developed in productive persistence.